Welcome to a thrilling and unexpected story about family, betrayal, and justice. In this gripping journey, Julian Maddox, CEO of Maddox Holdings, uncovers painful truths about his origins and the dark secrets surrounding his family. This is not just a tale of revenge, but a quest for justice. If you enjoy intense and inspiring stories like this, don't forget to share where you're watching from and hit like, subscribe, and follow to stay updated with more exciting stories brought to you every day. Now, let's dive into today's unfolding story. The Texas sun scorched down on Highway 271 as if it intended to burn everything beneath it. No wind, no shade, just black asphalt gleaming like molten tar under the blistering heat of a July afternoon. And right in the middle of that blazing desert, a sleek silver Aston Martin DB11 suddenly jolted, let out a strange hiss, then released a column of white smoke in the hood, like a flare calling for help. Julian Maddox, 29 years old, CEO of Maddox Holdings, a multinational investment conglomerate, slammed his palm against the steering wheel. He was used to controlling everything: markets, contracts, the media, but not this car. Especially not when he had just 27 minutes left to make it to a multi-million-dollar strategy meeting in Dallas. Tearing off his tie and unbuttoning his sweat-soaked Italian dress shirt, Julian stepped outside. The heat hit him like a slap from the sky. His shirt clung to his back, and every step sank into the softened pavement. When he opened the hood, a gust of hot smoke blasted out, forcing him to recoil. At that moment, a man who had once shaken hands with a U.S. president stood helplessly staring at an engine steaming like a lost child. Then, the rumble of an old engine echoed from afar. A beat-up 1997 Ford F-150 rolled slowly along the shoulder. Peeling paint, sagging frame, half-flat tires. It wheezed to a stop. The door creaked open. A black woman stepped out, hair tied up, hands still in oil-stained gloves, flannel shirt sleeves rolled high, worn jeans mottled with the stains of time. She walked toward him as if the highway belonged to her, unbothered by the heat or his polished exterior. "Car break down?" she asked, voice firm but calm. Julian frowned, instinctively taking half a step back. She didn't ask his name, didn't glance at his pricey watch, and certainly didn't hesitate because he was a Maddox. "And you are?" he asked. "Alana Graves. I'm a mechanic. Got a garage about 10 miles back. You want to call a tow truck or let me take a look?" Julian was still deciding how to respond when Alana stepped forward and popped the hood again. In under a minute, she shook her head. "Your cooling unit's blown. If you try to start it now, you'll destroy the whole engine. I can patch it up, but it'll only hold for about 2 hours." There was something in her tone, composed, unshaken, that left Julian speechless. No flattery, no deference, no measuring him by his money. She didn't care about status or his Tom Ford suit. She looked at him like someone who simply needed help. Then she turned back to her truck and grabbed a toolbox smudged with grease. Julian stood frozen, not because of the breakdown, but because, for the first time, he'd met someone entirely unimpressed by his glow. Under the scorching heat of Amarillo's outskirts, along the desolate stretch of Highway 271, Julian Maddox remained rooted beside his silver Aston Martin. His eyes were fixed on the hands of the woman who had just rescued him from being stranded under a sky on fire. He no longer heard the engine sputtering back to life or the distant honk from down the slope. Every one of Julian's senses now honed in on one thing: the worn silver ring on Alana Graves' finger, the woman in oil-stained workwear, whose gaze had not once flinched in the presence of power. The deep blue sapphire caught the sunlight, reflecting memories buried for over 2 decades. Julian squinted. A strange sensation swept across his chest. Not quite a memory, but an odd pull, as if his mind were struggling to retrieve a dusty fragment from deep within his subconscious. That stone, it looked familiar. Julian felt his throat go dry, unsure whether it was from surprise or the creeping fear of recognizing something uncomfortably familiar. A flicker of an image flashed in his mind. A little girl with messy hair, wide teary eyes, and a large tree in the middle of a camp yard he couldn't quite place. Just a sweltering afternoon, and maybe he had given her that ring. A faint voice echoed in his head. "I'll come back. I promise." Julian shook his head, tried to dispel the illusion. He took a step back, as if unwilling to believe that the woman standing before him was the same little girl from that hazy memory, one he had wrapped up and locked away in a part of his mind he never dared revisit. That memory flickered, disjointed, fragmented. "That ring," Julian began, but the words felt foreign in his mouth. Where did you get it?" Alana looked up. Her brows furrowed slightly, and almost instinctively, she closed her hand over the ring, shielding it. "Why? Is there a problem with it?" Her voice was firm, brittle like rubber left too long in the sun, though her eyes briefly flickered with unease. Julian swallowed hard, feeling the ground shift beneath him. I used to have one just like it," he said quietly. "I think I gave it to someone. A long time ago. A little girl. At Rosehaven Orphanage, I think." Alana's eyes wavered. She took a half step back, as if to hide the storm inside her, because she had recognized him already. "Then I guess you know why I've never taken it off," she said softly, turning away, clutching her grease-stained toolbox tight. "But you never came back." Julian was stunned. Her words hit like a punch straight to the chest, not loud, not dramatic, just brutally true. He stood there, beneath the glaring Texas sun, not as the multimillionaire CEO of Maddox Group, but as a boy who once made a promise, walked away, and forgot who had waited. The Aston Martin's engine was humming again, but Julian didn't leave. He just stood there, watching Alana walk toward the back of her truck. She opened the rear compartment, and from beneath an old coat, she pulled out a small metal box, the kind survivors use to store memories no one believes. "You asked why I kept the ring?" Alana opened the lid. "Because I never forgot. Not just the promise, but because of this." She handed him a stack of papers, aged, marked with faded red seals. Julian took them, flipping through each page. The name on the signature line, Gregory Maddox. His father. This is a copy of the land transfer contract. But look closely at the signature. It's not my mother's. It's forged. He faked the paperwork to steal our land. Right after that, my mother disappeared. No warning, no letters, no trace. Julian felt the world tilt around him. What did you just say?" Alana pulled out another letter. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, but unmistakably that of a mother who had once known how to love her child. "I didn't leave you. They forced me to go. Please forgive me." Signed, Celeste Graves. Her mother. "My mother didn't abandon me, Julian," Alana said, her voice low but her gaze sharp as steel. "They made her disappear, and the person behind it all was your father." Julian took a step back, still gripping the stack of documents. His heart pounded, not from anger, but from fear, because he knew what kind of man his father was, the kind who would sacrifice anything to protect power. "You kept all of this?" Alana gave a dry, quiet laugh. "I waited for the right person, the right time, and the right reason." Julian clenched his hand, then looked her in the eye. "And what do you think I'm supposed to do with it?" Alana stepped closer, stopping just one step away from him. "I don't think anything, Julian, but now you've seen it. You're part of this, so you'll have to choose." After leaving Alana's garage, Julian Maddox drove a temporary SUV borrowed from the company's local office, but his mind was spiraling. Everything from that morning had unraveled. The sapphire ring, the look in Alana's eyes, and most of all, the stack of documents she had handed him. Proof that his father, Gregory Maddox, had forged land deeds to steal her family's property and force her mother to disappear. Julian didn't want to believe it, but every line, every signature, every stamp seal of approval on the certified documents pointed to one truth. Gregory Maddox had manipulated the system and erased an entire family just to expand his real estate empire. Julian parked the car in a quiet roadside turnout. The Texas wind swept through the slightly open window, carrying the dry scent of scorched earth and sunburnt grass. He stared blankly, over and over again, at the image of that sapphire ring on Alana's hand. Like a looping reel in a broken film. Curly-haired girl, blue ring. "I promised I'd come back." Suddenly, Julian's phone vibrated. On the screen, Evelyn Hargrove, Maddox Group's legal counsel. He answered. Her voice was as cold and controlled as always. "Julian, your father wants to see you. Immediately, it's urgent, and if the press calls, there are questions you're not to answer. He ended the call without responding. In his mind, childhood memories, long buried beneath piano lessons, charity galas, and Gregory's relentless lectures, were rising back to life. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the truth about Alana. It was a question now screaming in his head. Who am I in this family? Julian opened the glove box and pulled out a folder Evelyn had once shown him in passing last year. Adoption documents. Federal citizenship finalization, Julian Maddox, born 1996. He recalled how Evelyn had brushed it off. Just paperwork to secure inheritance rights. But now, he saw it clearly. His entire record before 2006 was blank. Just as he was about to call Evelyn back to confront her about what else had been hidden, a new email notification popped up in his inbox. No sender name. Subject line, just 10 chilling words. You're not the heir, you're the instrument. He opened the email. A scanned image loaded. Age documents. Yellow with time. Handwritten in slanted script, signed G. Maddox. At the bottom was a single line of chilling annotation. Old birth certificate processed. The child from Rosehaven Orphanage has been fully re-identified. Julian froze. Rosehaven. That name. It sounded like an echo from a hazy dream he used to have as a child. He had always known he was adopted, that he wasn't Gregory's biological son. But what he hadn't known was that everything about him, his name, his birth date, even the Maddox surname, had been fabricated from scratch. He wasn't adopted. He was a project. A cold sensation crept down his spine, like the Maddox estate itself had programmed him from the moment he first set foot in it. Julian scrolled through remaining pages. Immunization records, psychological evaluations, identity reclassification forms. All handwritten, all stamped official. His entire life, every step, every chapter, had been drafted on paper before he even had someone to call family. On the road back to the Maddox estate, Julian stopped the car at an intersection. The red light blinked like an emergency signal straight from his subconscious. Inside the SUV, silence pressing from all sides as he looked into the rear-view mirror. Not the heir. He repeated quietly, his voice sinking as if tasting each word. But the instrument. The corner of his mouth lifted into a twisted smile. There was no shock left in him now. Only something clear and sharp, like a blade pulled from a sheath. If I'm the instrument, he whispered, then it's time this tool struck back. Dusk settled over Amarillo, Texas. The last light of day poured like honey over the sun-bleached tin roof of Graves' auto, casting long reflections onto the dusty window of the small office inside. Julian Maddox sat still at the scratched wooden desk, eyes frozen on a faded photograph. The handwritten note on the back cut clean and deep. For my children, Mom is always with you. Love, Alana and Julian. Mom, 2005. Alana stood beside him, her hand trembling slightly as she opened an old wooden box long buried beneath the tile floor. She said nothing. She simply pushed a thin stack of documents toward him. Julian took them, flipping through each page as if unlocking pieces of a stolen past. A birth certificate, a guardianship form, a handwritten letter. They all bore the same name, Julian Graves. Julian Graves, he repeated, his voice catching in his throat. Born October 14th, 1996. Mother, Celeste Graves. Father, unknown. He took a deep breath, but it did little to ground him. Graves? Graves is... Your real name, Alana said, her voice hoarse. Gregory adopted you from Rosehaven Orphanage when you were 10, but he didn't just adopt you. He erased your entire identity, rewrote your paperwork, replaced your birth certificate, and gave you a new life as Julian Maddox. Julian sat still. No more doubts. No more hypotheticals. His entire life had been a blueprint, programmed by Gregory, the man who turned a nameless orphan into the ideal heir for an empire built on deception. A soft sound came from the doorway. Luther Graves, Celeste's brother, Alana's uncle, stepped in, holding a weathered envelope. His gaze swept over Julian and Alana, aged but sharp, as if he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. It's time, he he said, his voice raspy and slow, pulled from deep within his chest. "There are things I kept hidden, because I thought you weren't ready. But I was wrong. You sought the truth, and now the truth must be told." Alana and Julian sat in silence across from Luther Graves, their quiet, aging uncle who now looked noticeably older, hair silver and disheveled, eyes clouded with time, but still carrying the piercing edge of a seasoned attorney. He began recounting the painful memories their family had buried for years. "Celeste, your mother, lived with me before she was forced out of town. She used to be a community nurse in a small town called Ashton, Texas. She was driven out after refusing to sell her ancestral land. Gregory Maddox had quietly set his sights on that land in Ashton. It sat on top of a major aquifer and legally belonged to Celeste. He needed it as a foundation for his Ashton Renaissance real estate project. When she wouldn't sell, he changed tactics." Luther walked over to a wooden cabinet and pulled out a rusty metal box. Inside were letters, original land surveys, old legal documents, and a cassette tape. He colluded with a high-ranking land commissioner, forged documents, and staged Celeste's death in a fake car accident. Then, using his connection, he had the land seized under the claim that there were no legal heirs. He even had the two of you placed into the foster system, cut off completely from surviving family. Julian sat motionless. "You knew? This whole time?" "I did," Luther nodded solemnly, "but he scrubbed every trace. He used his influence to have me removed from the legal guardian list and threatened to kill me if I ever spoke out. I took Alana in after she ran away from a foster home, but we always had to hide her identity. As for you, Gregory pulled you from the orphanage, rewrote your records, and slapped the Maddox name on you like it was your birthright." Luther slowly extended the envelope. Its ink faded, its corners frayed. "Before your mother was forced out of Ashton, she came to see me," he continued, his voice tightening. "She left this with me, said I should only give it to you if you ever came back looking for the truth." Julian took the letter with both hands. He opened it not like a CEO, but like a child clutching the last thread of a home stolen from him. "My son," the letter began, in that familiar slanted script, "if you're reading this, then the lies could no longer hide the truth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from cruel hands. Alana is your sister, your blood. Protect her, and don't ever let anyone erase my name from this world again." The tears came silently. Julian didn't speak. Alana gripped his hand tightly. "So all my life, I was just a shell for Maddox to build," Julian whispered, his voice raw. "No," Luther said firmly. "You are Graves, by blood, by memory, by truth. No one has the right to rewrite your origin with lies. Alana was the first to rise. We're going to do this." Julian nodded. "This time, no one gets erased." Luther slowly stood and walked once more to the old wooden cabinet. He pulled out another rusted tin box and set it on the table, like handing over a buried fragment of memory. "This too," he said. "I used to be a lawyer. I once tried to expose Gregory Maddox, but I lost the case due to lack of evidence and political pressure. After that failure, I was forced out of profession. But before Gregory managed to silence the entire town with his power, I backed up a number of documents, including the original forged land transfer contract, the falsified paperwork, and a video recording of a secret 2006 meeting between Gregory and the Jefferson Development Council, where he persuaded them to rezone your family land as a strategic development zone under the pretense that there were no legal heirs. You kept all of that for all these years?" Alana choked out. "I was waiting for the right ones to speak the truth," he replied, his eyes heavy as they swept over both of them. "And now I know that moment has come." Julian tightened his grip on the folder in his hand, his eyes no longer lost. "We're going to make him face what he did." Alana stepped closer, squeezing his hand. "I always wondered why you look so much like me. Now I understand." In that moment, every title, every asset, every ounce of prestige tied to the Maddox name crumbled. Before them stood only two children, once torn from their mother's arms, raised under different names, now finally reunited in the wreckage of a stolen promise. Julian looked at Alana, his voice catching. "You're my sister, and they took everything from us." Alana nodded, eyes fixed on the blazing sunset outside. We can't go back, but we can start from here. Together. Luther gave a small nod, his hands trembling as he returned Amelia's letter to its plastic sleeve. You're not alone. The truth can be delayed, but it cannot be buried. And for the first time, after all the loss, Julian nodded, not as a CEO, but as a brother who had finally found a family he never knew he'd lost. After a long embrace inside the small garage in the outskirts of Amarillo, Alana and Julian Maddox, now revealed to be biological siblings, looked at each other not just as survivors of the same storm, but as allies united by a mission to expose the truth. Gregory Maddox, Julian's adoptive father and the man behind a string of calculated crimes, hadn't just stolen their land. He had disappeared their mother, Celeste Graves, all to protect an empire built on blood and lies. The next morning, Julian drove the black Range Rover back to the Maddox estate on the outskirts of Dallas, a place that once symbolized a family's absolute power. But this time, he wasn't returning as the heir. He was returning as the exposer. Alana, clad in a worn leather jacket, carried a heavy case filled with evidence, copies of land transfer papers, handwritten letters from her mother, and the secret council meeting footage provided by Uncle Luther. We're not just taking this to court. The public needs to know, Alana said, her eyes no longer trembling like the night before, but blazing like an engine ready to ignite. Julian nodded. I've already contacted someone I trust at the Amarillo Post. If the story goes public, no one in the Maddox empire will be left standing. They started with the hidden archives in Gregory's old study, a room sealed with a solid oak key Julian had once secretly duplicated. Inside were stacks of confidential documents, sealed property acquisitions, satellite images of Ashton before and after demolition, everything pointing to one singular plan, erasing the Graves family from the map to seize their land. The true bombshell came when Julian unlocked a safe concealed behind a portrait of his grandfather. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten draft titled, Community Bloodline Replacement Strategy, The Graves Plan. They froze. The document outlined Gregory's detailed methods, manipulating community funds, faking Celeste's death through falsified medical certification, and shielding federal oversight by establishing a sham nonprofit foundation. That same evening, Julian and Alana met with the lead investigative reporter from the Amarillo Post in a dim cafe near the Jefferson Bridge. Beneath soft amber light, they handed over the full dossier, along with audio recordings from Gregory's office. This is the price of an empire, Alana whispered. 3 days later, the front page story exploded. The truth behind Maddox Enterprises, a dynasty built on blood and stolen land. It spread like wildfire across social media, triggering a formal investigation by the FBI. National broadcasts played damning audio clips from the secret meetings, with Gregory Maddox himself heard discussing how eliminate legal obstacles tied to the Ashton Renaissance Project. Maddox Enterprises' stock plummeted. Global partners demanded clarity on corporate ethics. And a wave of public outrage rose from the very communities long silenced. But Gregory Maddox didn't flinch. With the ruthless composure of a man who'd spent 3 decades bending markets and law to his will, he launched a massive PR counterattack, flooding media outlets with cash, hiring top-tier legal teams, and releasing a public statement. This is nothing more than a smear campaign. We believe in the rule of law and will continue moving forward. He refused to cancel the grand opening of the Maddox Horizon complex, the largest real estate project in Texas history, built atop the very land once owned by the Graves family. That night, the West Texas sky glowed gold with bursts of fireworks. A massive stage lit by hundreds of lights and the blazing Maddox logo declared defiance in the face of public scandal. The event was broadcast live. Reporters from the Wall Street Journal, CBS News, and Houston Chronicle packed a crowd, waiting to hear. What will Gregory Maddox say after the scandal? But no one knew they weren't about to witness a grand opening. They were about to witness a historic reckoning. Alana stepped out of her beat-up pickup truck, wearing a simple, clean-cut professional outfit, carrying a gray canvas tote bag. Julian walked beside her, not the polished millionaire in Italian suits and silk ties, but a man fully awake, gripping the folder that held everything needed to expose Gregory Maddox, his adoptive father. On stage, Gregory stood confidently in a light gray suit, holding the microphone like a seasoned politician. This project represents the future and renewal of Ashton. From barren land, we have created hope for community. But just as he finished the sentence, the massive LED screen behind him flickered. The project graphics vanished. In their place appeared document scans. Celeste Graves' falsified death certificate, annotated zoning maps with Gregory's handwriting, and a voice recording of him telling his attorney, "There's no one left alive to sue." The crowd held its breath. Gregory turned around, face drained of color. What the hell is this? Alana stepped onto the stage. A reporter filming live handed her the microphone. She held the folder high. "My name is Alana Graves. The land you're standing on once belonged to my mother, Celeste Graves. The woman Maddox Enterprises declared dead in order to steal everything." The crowd erupted into murmurs and shouts. Gregory stepped back, cornered, no way out. Then, from the audience, an elderly woman slowly emerged. Her hair was silver, her eyes deep but bright. She walked with a cane, but every step was steady. She raised a trembling hand and spoke. "I am Celeste Graves. I was never dead." The entire plaza fell silent. She climbed the stage, standing beside her daughter. They held hands. Alana turned to the crowd, voice clear and unshaken. "They locked my mother away in a secret medical facility to cover up their crimes. But truth never dies. It only waits for someone brave enough to speak its name." That night's triumph didn't come from fireworks or a well-crafted speech. It came from a mother returned from the shadows, and a truth no one could deny. The stage lights still glared bright. Applause rippled faintly from scattered corners. But the atmosphere had shifted entirely. As Julian Maddox finished his statement and Alana revealed a folder of unshakable evidence to the press, a massive undercurrent, long brewing, was ready to surge. And then, piercing the stunned crowd in the blaze of stage lights, came the sound no one had expected. The whine of police sirens, red and blue lights slashing through the night like blades. From both ends of grand opening venue, black SUVs from the FBI and federal law enforcement swarmed in, surrounding the stage area within minutes. A SWAT team in bulletproof gear and full tactical armor emerged from vehicles like soldiers entering a battlefield. Gregory Maddox, still standing in the stage lights, turned to look, at first with a forced smile, but his face quickly froze as he realized every weapon and badge was trained on him. A senior federal agent stepped up to the podium. "Gregory Maddox, you are under arrest for falsifying legal documents, unlawfully seizing citizen property, illegal detainment, laundering funds through charitable foundations, and systemic human rights violations." Each charge struck like a hammer blow to the throne he had occupied for over 3 decades. Gregory tried to step back, but 2 agents closed in, locking his wrists with a pair of cold steel cuffs. The crowd held its breath. TV cameras captured every second as the man once dubbed the real estate king of Texas was led away like a common criminal. Julian stood motionless. He had known this moment would come, but watching the man he once called father hauled away in the flashing lights of police sirens tore through him like a blade. Beside him, Alana didn't shed a tear. She knew justice begins with truth, and tonight they had delivered it to the world. The stage erupted. The crowd roared. Hundreds of cameras turned toward the 3 figures, Alana, Julian, and Celeste. Each bore old wounds, but now they stood as a family reborn from ashes. The media descended into chaos. Headlines were being written in real time. Gregory Maddox arrested mid-ceremony. The fall of a real estate empire built on blood and deceit. On social media, hashtags like #JusticeForGraves and #MaddoxExposed trended globally within the hour. But the true climax came with a leaked audio recording sent anonymously to multiple newsrooms. Gregory Maddox himself, in a private board meeting, admitting to orchestrating the forged land deeds and ordering the termination of funding to the Rosehaven orphanage years ago. Julian, he said, had been brought in as a long-term investment asset. That night, America was stunned. An empire collapsed. A truth was returned. And amid the fallout, 2 forgotten children, Alana and Julian, had risen not to reclaim their names, but to demand justice for those who never had a voice. Off to the side of the stage, Celeste Graves, the woman once declared dead, sat quietly, her hand gently clasping her daughter's. In her eyes, there was no more bitterness, only peace after the final storm. In the aftermath of the explosive reveal at the Maddox Horizon complex, the entire state of Texas reeled. The image of Gregory Maddox, handcuffed, surrounded by federal agents, and exposed before hundreds of flashing cameras, became the defining symbol of the collapse of a dynasty built on lies and manipulation. Within the following week, Julian hosted a press conference on the very land once stolen from the Graves family more than 2 decades earlier. Before a crowd of packed reporters, Julian stood in a plain white shirt, no longer cloaked in the polished aura of the Maddox air. Standing beside Alana, his voice was steady but firm. "I am officially renouncing the name Julian Maddox. From this day forward, I am Julian Graves." The declaration brought a moment of stunned silence, followed by a wave of applause. It was more than a name change. It was a return, a reckoning, an apology, and a vow for justice. In the weeks that followed, Alana and Julian began transforming the old family garage into a technical training center for underserved youth, those, like Alana once was, who had been left behind by society. They named it the Graves Mechanical and Hope Center, with the motto, "Where every fracture could be repaired." At the grand opening, Alana wore a deep blue technician's coat and addressed a crowd of hundreds. "Not everyone gets a second chance. But if you do, don't just use it to survive. Use it to build chances for others." The audience sat in still silence before erupting in thunderous applause, from people who had once felt ignored, forgotten, dismissed. Julian worked quietly behind the scenes, managing administrative duties and seeking new sponsors, not under Maddox's name, but with his own story as proof that one can break free from a toxic legacy and rewrite their own life. Every evening, after the center closed, Alana would sit alone in the shop, wiping grease from her calloused hands, eyes drifting to a framed photo on the wall, an old image of her and her mother beneath a great oak tree. Beneath it, a hand-carved inscription read, "Hold on to what's right, even when the world chooses what's easy." For Alana and Julian, justice didn't come from a courtroom. It came from action, from refusing to look away from painful truths. By choosing not to forget the past, they turned it into a lantern for others to follow. Inside the workshop, the sound of saws, engines, and laughter blended into a new kind of symphony across land that once bore only silence and scars. Justice had been restored, but more importantly, hope had been planted again by those the world once cast aside. As golden sunlight spilled across the metal roof of the Graves Empowerment Center in Amarillo, Texas, a group of teens worked together dismantling an old engine. The click of wrenches and bursts of laughter filled the air. Alana stood behind the glass wall, watching them with pride. Each student was someone who had been forgotten, now writing a new future with their own hands. Inside the main office, Julian, now officially Julian Graves, was in discussion with a representative from the Civil Justice Foundation about launching a scholarship program for underprivileged youth. Though he no longer bore the Maddox name, he retained the most valuable piece of that past, the ability to use privilege not to control, but to correct. Alana walked in with 2 steaming cups of coffee. They didn't need to speak. A look, a nod, enough. The storms, the grief, the secrets buried for 2 decades had finally been unraveled, laid bare by truth and trust. In the garden out back, beneath the great oak where their mother once led them as children, a small family gathering was underway. Celeste, now nearly 60, her face etched with time but eyes still radiant, was telling Naomi, Alana's 12-year-old daughter, stories about wildflower fields from her youth. No more secrets, no more pain to hide. As the sun dipped low, Julian brought out an old wooden box. He opened it before the family. Inside sat the sapphire ring, untouched by time, gleaming like a promise never forgotten. He handed it to Alana, not as a vow to return, but as a recognition. Family, no matter how torn apart, will always find its way back. Celeste took both her children's hands, her voice trembling. Some truths may be buried, but they are never lost. And when the time is right, they return like light after storm. That night, 3 generations sat on the porch of the humble workshop, staring up at the starlit Amarillo sky. Alana closed her eyes, her hand resting on the rough wooden bench, once a place of silence and doubt, now a cradle of hope. This story did not end in triumph, but in healing, not with power, but with perseverance, and above all with truth, delayed perhaps, but never buried.